Today we're going to be learning about solving one-step multiplication and division equations. The good thing is the process we use to solve addition and subtraction equations is exactly the same for multiplication and division. We're just changing the operations. Just some reminders: you want to use the inverse operation to isolate your variable, and remember that means the opposite operation. And you want to keep it balanced. Don't forget about that golden rule. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. Make sure you show all of your steps, check your work, and if you don't follow this process, we're going to mark it wrong. Alright, so just like we did before, we're going to draw our river, bring down some equal signs. This needs to be straight, and you can't cross the river just because you want to. You've got to change it. And this river, as we call it, also separates the left side of the equation from the right side. Just as we did before, you're going to find the side of the equation your variable is on and determine what operation is being used. Remember that a number beside a variable means to multiply, so the opposite of multiplying by 5 would be to, I hope you said it, divide by 5. And the way we show division is with that fraction bar, not with the bar and the two dots. We don't write a division problem vertically like that. The only way to write it vertically is with the fraction bar. So now that my equation's balanced, I know that 5 divided by 5 is 1, and we have 1c. Our variable's isolated. This is a basic fact, so I'm not going to have you show any work over here for that. What is 45 divided by 5? That's correct. It is 9. Now we're going to check our solution to see if we're right. We're going to do 5. The most common mistake is just to write your solution beside it. This does not mean just to write it beside it. That is not a 59. That means 5 times whatever we think c is. So use your multiplication symbol. I would recommend not using the x because you might confuse it with a variable. And then it says equals 45. Our check steps should match exactly the original problem. We're just replacing the variable with what we think the solution is now. Again, we have two sides of the equation. We have a left and we have a right. And a lot of times people say, well, yeah, 5 times 9 is 45. But your teacher doesn't know you're doing that, so you have to write it down. You actually have to do this work. 5 times 9 is 45, and again, it's a basic fact, so no work is done over here. This side is 45, it's balanced, so you know that your solution's correct. Come back and box your solution. Now, was that so bad? I don't think so. Look at the next one. Draw your river, bring down your equal sign. We have a left side, we have a right side. This side is where our variable's on. I know it's not what you're used to, but it doesn't matter what side of the equation the variable is on. And you're going to have to leave it on the right because, like I said before, we can't just jump sides of the river. Alright, here we go. The variable's right here, so this tells us to multiply 4 times a. The opposite of multiplying by 4 would be to divide by 4 on both sides. This cancels and makes a 1, and 1a is just a. Your variable's isolated. Isn't that great? Okay, now this one says negative 64 divided by 4. Now that's not a basic fact, so slide over here and do 4 into 64. And 4 goes into 24 6 times. Now don't forget, look back for your sign. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. Now we're going to check our solution to see if we're right. And you write it exactly like this original. So negative 64 equals 4 times what we think is the solution. negative 16. If you want to use parentheses beside the dot, that's fine. It's up to you, or you can just use parentheses and no dot. This side has no work to do, but this does. So 16 times 4 is 64. Now go back and check your sign. A negative times a positive is a negative. This is balanced, so we know that our solution is correct. So both of these are multiplication equations. The variables on the left for the first, variables on the right on the second. It really doesn't matter. You work it out the same way. When you look at the third problem on our sheet, you see it looks different. This doesn't show multiplication. It shows division. Notice I only put one pair of equal signs down there, and you're going to see why. All right, here we go. If they're dividing by 6, the inverse is to multiply by 6 on both sides. Now the problem with that, guys, is this is a fraction. We don't multiply fractions vertically. We multiply fractions horizontally. And we have to make all whole numbers a fraction by putting it over 1. When you do that, 6 goes into 6 once, 6 goes into 6 once, so we're multiplying a times 1, which equals exactly what we want, an isolated variable. Now I didn't go ahead and put the 6 over here because a lot of people say, well, if we put a 6 over 1 here, we have to put a 6 over 1 on the left side. You don't, because this is not a fraction. If it were a fraction, sure, put the 6 over 1. We have a whole number, so you might as well multiply by a whole number. If you memorized your 12s, you know that 6 times 12 is 72. And a positive times a negative is a negative. So that was a little different. Now let's check it. And that's why when you're writing these by yourself, I would suggest writing the original equation in ink and doing your steps in pencil so you can tell exactly what to put for your check step. Since the second step, the inverse operation, is on the side this time. So that would be negative 12 equals a, well, we think that is set negative 72 over 6. There's no work on the left side. Basic fact, 6 goes into 72 12 times, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative. We are correct. Box that solution. These take a little bit longer to practice before you feel real comfortable about them. So let's look at the back. All right. And this is an example of why we have you show these steps. You can't just look at this problem and say, oh, I know what the solution is supposed to be. You just can't. So, again, you're going to draw your river. It's a division equation, so you only need one equal sign. And now we find our variable on the right. It's divided by 12, so the inverse is times 12. And we need a fraction. If I multiply the right by 12, I'm going to multiply the left times 12. Here we go. 12 goes into 12 once, 12 goes into 12 once, and now we have n times 1, which is n. Variable is isolated. Now we have to do 12 times a negative 2.1. And don't worry about the sign until we're finished. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1. Put your 0, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 1 is 2. So we have 2, 5, 2. There's one decimal place in this number, none here, so you're going to move it over 1, and we should get 25.2. Now let's check our sign. A positive times a negative should be a negative. Time to see if we are correct. So, negative 2.1 equals n, well, we're going to replace that variable with a negative 25.2 over 12. That's not a basic fact, so you come over here and you do 12 into 25.2. 0, 2 times 12 is 24. We've got 1 left, which is smaller. We're good. Bring down the 2, and 12 goes into 12 once. So we have a 2.1 here. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. And hallelujah, both sides are balanced and the same, so we are correct. All right. Now, this one, as you see, is another division problem. I do want to start you out on this one, and then I'm going to let you finish it, because it has one little tricky spot that I want to make sure you don't mess up on. Have our river. We see the variables on the right, no biggie. Is being divided by a negative 9, so we're going to multiply by exactly that number, negative 9. If you don't multiply by the negative, then you'll end up having a negative variable, and you don't want a negative variable. It will make you have to do another step at the end, so you might as well take care of that in the beginning. This is not your operation, so you're not going to change it. Your operation is division, dividing by a negative 9. So multiply by a negative 9. Negative 9 goes into negative 9 once. Negative 9 goes into negative 9 once. And a times 1 is a positive. Oops, I'm going to make that color. Is a positive a. The variable is isolated. Now, if we multiply the right side by a negative 9, you're going to multiply the left side by a negative 9. Otherwise, you won't be balanced. Remember, equations are all about being balanced, and the golden rule, as I say, what you do to one side, you do to the other. So we've got to do 140 times 9. That would be 0, 36, 1,260. A negative times a positive is a negative. I already got ready to do my check step. The original problem starts with 140, so your check step needs to stay the same. A, which we think is negative 1,260, divided by a negative 9. Alright, well this side, there's no work, thank goodness. And now we have to do some division. We're going to do 9 into 1,260. 9 goes into 12 once, with 3 left, smaller, so we're good. Bring down, 9 into 36 is 4. 4 times 9 is 36. Don't forget, if you have numbers in that dividend, you have to bring them down and do the division, even if it will not go. If the divisor doesn't go, you put a 0 up here, and 0 times 9 is 0. So we have 140, and negative divided by negative is a positive. Yay! So this is our solution. Like I said, the trick here is to make sure that you multiply by that negative. Okay? I want you to try the next 3, pause the video, and come back in just a little bit. So here are the answers for the last 3. Make sure you don't just check your solution. You need to check that you have your fraction bar here, your dots here, you multiply by a negative. And here again, you need to divide by a negative. This is not the operation. The operation is shown here with the multiplication. So you have to divide by a negative. If you don't, you have a negative divided by a positive, which would give you a negative w, and you don't want a negative variable, like I said. And just as a little tricky one here, which was really nice to work out, you can have a solution of 0. It is possible. If you need to pause the video and check your steps, that would be a good idea. And hopefully now you understand how to solve one-step multiplication and division equations. See you later.